Hugh Hewitt is here. His nationally syndicated radio show is heard in more than 120 cities across the U.S. He interviewed President Donald Trump 15 times during the 2016 campaign. He has participated as a panelist in 4 primary debates. His new book outlines how this president and a unified GOP could work together to transform the country. He calls it the fourth way, the conservative playbook for a lasting GOP majority. I am pleased to have him at the table. Welcome.
Good to be back, Charlie. Thank you for having me.
Let me just trace the evolution of Hugh Hewitt. Where are you politically?
I am a center-right Paul Ryan conservative.
A center-right Paul Ryan conservative.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's been your evolution in the 2016 long campaign on Donald Trump?
It's a little bit tortured. During the debates, because I had signed on for the 4 CNN Salem debates before they occurred, I was Switzerland,
yes.
And I did the interviews with the various Republican candidates, including about a dozen with President Trump before he received the nomination. After he was nominated, I supported him, happy to do so. When the Judge Curiel incident happened, I announced that he was flying the party into the mountain and that it was, if he kept it up, it would be like stage 4 cancer. He stopped, and so I got back on the Trump train, campaigned for him throughout the summer, barnstormed, in fact, with Mike Gallagher and some of my colleagues from Salem, Sheriff David Clark, for Donald Trump in some swing states like Pennsylvania and Florida. And after Access Hollywood tweeted, "I wish you would get out of the race," I thought more was coming and worse. He didn't get out of the race, and so I ended up supporting him and voting for him because of the Supreme Court and because, by and large, I believe, as I discussed in the book, he can transform with Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and Vice President Pence the country and create a semi-lasting, nothing is forever, but a good, enduring Republican majority.
And what are the conditions to do that? What are the necessary, essential ingredients of that, and what could prevent it from happening?
Scandal could prevent it from happening. The 5th chapter in the fourth way is about impeachment, which is a reality with this president. The prospect of an impeachment, especially if we get wiped out in 2018.
It's a word already mentioned.
Yes, and David Brooks said within a year. I don't believe that, but I believe if the Republicans lose the House in 2018, unlikely but possible, they would immediately bring impeachment proceedings under the emoluments clause pursuant to Professor Tribe's argument, et cetera. But on the other hand, he had a very good start. I like the pipeline executive orders. If he nominates Judge Gorsuch or Justice Willett of Texas or any of his 21 judges to be the Supreme Court justice, I'll be very happy. 3 months ago, Charlie, I thought originalism was dead in this country. Dead, dead, dead.
Because Scalia originalism?
Yes. Scalia was the best proponent for it. Clarence Thomas was another great proponent. The Chief Justice is an originalist and an old friend, and I believe that...
I thought the Chief Justice was more a federalist.
No, I think... stick with the rule. And I've read the Citizens United concurrence often, and I point out in the book, if people are worried about overturning Obergefell, it's not going to happen if you read the Chief Justice Roberts' opinion. By the way, I think he is vindicated by his Sebelius decision. I make that argument in the fourth way, that had he overturned Obamacare, we wouldn't be looking at a unified GOP government. So the good stuff he could do... Wait.
Because he made that decision, did you consider the right decision at the time?
I did. I was originally shocked by it. I read it and I was persuaded under this theory that if you can find a way to uphold a federal statute, you ought to uphold a federal statute. He did find a way. It's somewhat tortured. Nevertheless, it's a way. And it turned out politically to be a Marbury v. Madison sort of brilliant decision. Liberals will be shocked by that, but they lost. They're down 12 Senate seats, Charlie, since 2009. They're down 14 governorships. They're down 54 seats in the House of Representatives, and they're down 900 seats.
And why is that?
Obamacare.
It is really.
I don't believe it's racism towards the president. I fault his foreign policy, the JVs, the red line, the leading from behind. But by and large, I think Obamacare's toll on the average American has been horrific. I know some people have been saved by it. I'm not indifferent to their real heartfelt stories that they weren't covered and now they are. But $6,000 deductibles and a premium that in Phoenix, for example, went up 117%.
Yeah, from region to region, it was very different.
Yeah, it just wiped out kitchen table conversations.
So that was it in your judgment?
I think that's why he won Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, was a combination of deindustrialization and touching that chord. I'm an Ohioan. He hit Trumbull County, which had only voted twice for Republican, for Hoover and for Nixon in this last 100 years, and it voted for Trump. It's a steelworker, car building, blue-collar county, went for Trump. So he touched something and made a revolution. He can continue that. And so this book is about, hey, Paul Ryan, to my side, Give him what he campaigned for. A fence. Give him infrastructure spending. He's got to have money to spend.
But I read today that infrastructure spending is being recommended by some as a way to reach out to another constituency.
It is. And I think it's the inner city. I think it's Latinos and African Americans and distressed white communities that have been deindustrialized. And I think Steve Bannon thinks that way, by the way, about infrastructure. It's one of the few things on which I probably agree with Steve completely, is that this needs to happen in the right places, targeted industrial policy. Paul Ryan doesn't believe in this. Kevin Brady doesn't believe in this. Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell doesn't believe in this, but he won the presidency, and they ought to give it to him. They have to give him the fence. But I also believe, and make the argument in this book, his Nixon to China moment, Donald Trump, could transform immigration policy.
His Nixon to China moment is to transform immigration policy?
To allow most of the 11 to 12 million people who are here without legal permission to stay, not to become citizens.
Oh, I see. Yeah, exactly.
But no one could criticize him as soft on immigration, just like only Nixon could go and sit with Mao. Donald Trump can do whatever he wants on immigration, and no one will believe it's amnesty. So he's invulnerable, and he could extend his...
And do you think he's considering that?
I do. And I think Sean Spicer telegraphed that in Monday's press conference when he said, our priorities are not to go after the DACA kids. Our priorities are to go after people who've broken the law in the United States and who represent a threat. That's actually channeling the blueprint for reform that Reince Priebus, the so-called autopsy that was done 4 years ago. A regularization is exactly what the Republicans called for. And I believe Donald Trump will embrace that because it makes sense. He knows the people who work in the trades who we had in to see him are largely Latino in places like California and Arizona. The drywallers are almost 100% Latino Americans. And so he understands getting reelected. I'm an optimist on that.
And with respect to trade, you're at one with him?
No, this is where we separate.
Imagine my surprise.
Yeah, the biggest division is I don't even understand the border adjustment.
Ryan too.
And Paul Ryan wants to do a border adjustment thing. I'm a Reaganite. I think free trade grows economies. Richard Nixon's definition of real progress, the ongoing incremental expansion of liberty and literacy in a growing number of stable regimes in or allied to the West. That is based on free trades, on shipping.
He didn't say democratic regimes,
no,
he said stable regimes.
And so, and Egypt under Mubarak was stable, then it was unstable, and Egypt under Sisi is stable. And we can have liberty and literacy
but
advanced.
there's some threats to that. I mean,
there
as
are.
you know, I mean, I talked to a lot of Egyptians, and I interviewed Mubarak a lot, and interviewed Sisi as well, twice. You know, I mean, there's some real challenges.
You know, the interesting thing will be there is a suggestion that President Trump sign an executive order adding the Muslim Brotherhood or directing the Secretary of State to add the Muslim Brotherhood to the list of terrorist organizations. If he does it, it will be quite controversial, but I think President Sisi would welcome that. And if you've read the Looming Terror,
he pretty much has said that.
Yeah, and Lawrence Wright argues, gives me the reason why I believe it would be justified. But I don't expect a democracy in the Middle East to come out of Egypt, but I think Trump and Sisi will get along and Netanyahu will get along, and we will be better off in 4 years than we were under President Obama.
Do you worry about Israel? I mean, just as a friend of Israel, do you worry about all the settlements and the fact that it makes a two-state solution seem further and further away?
I do. Michael Oren is a frequent guest on my show, and the ambassador, now deputy minister, is a very smart historian, and I think he represents the center-right in Israel, which would be the center-left in America, on settlements, and I think he's wise. And Netanyahu is political, and I don't think he wants to do away with a two-state settlement either, but it would require Hamas to go away.
The argument of Tom Friedman and others about Netanyahu is that he's not willing. He is at core a politician, and therefore, unlike Rabin, is not willing to take a risk for peace.
He came close once. I don't blame anyone in Israel for any of this. I think Hamas is the problem, and I thought Secretary Kerry's speech was ill-advised, and the UN move was a terrible move. And because the problem is not Israel here, they'd do a deal, Charlie. I think they tried to at White River. They've tried to a few times. They've invited the president to come to the Knesset. Yeah, both of them have tried. And it's not, Israel is not the problem.
Then you need a bargaining partner. But at the same time, John Kerry, who tried and desperately to bring them together,
I despair of that changing much in the next 20 years. What I would like to see is ISIS eradicated. In fact, I thought in the inaugural speech
that was
the single line that will endure is we must eradicate radical Islamic terror from the face of the earth. That's a